The Enigma machine's rotors had clicked through 159 billion possible combinations before settling on the configuration that would kill Admiral Otto Schmitz. Section Officer Margaret Thornhill didn't know that yet. She only knew that the intercept designated Ultra Hydra 4719 had originated from OKW Naval Command at 0347 hours, an unusual transmission time that immediately elevated its priority. German signals discipline typically restricted high-level communications to scheduled windows. This message had been sent outside protocol. Her pencil moved methodically through the decryption worksheet. Years of pattern recognition had trained her to identify message classifications before complete translation. This one carried the distinctive formatting of Luftwaffe transport coordination. Bureaucratic, precise, maddeningly detailed. Then she reached the passenger manifest line. General Major Otto Schmitz, Kriegsmarine Strategic Planning Directorate. Thornhill's hand stopped. She reread the line twice, checking her substitution cipher key against the Enigma rotor settings recovered from U-559 the previous October. No error. The message explicitly named Schmitz, included his complete travel itinerary, and provided operational details no competent signals officer should ever transmit via wireless. Someone in Berlin had made a catastrophic mistake. She flagged the intercept with a red priority marker and walked it directly to Commander Deniston's office, bypassing standard routing procedures. Deniston read the translation in silence, his expression shifting from curiosity to recognition to grim satisfaction. "How confident are you in this translation?" he asked. "Before we continue, click that subscribe button, like this video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It brings me great joy knowing that these war stories and lessons get to people all over the world. Your support helps us bring more thrilling war stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them." "Now, let's get back to the story." "Absolute," Thornhill replied. "Cross-checked against 3 separate rotor configurations. The message is authentic." Deniston reached for the secure telephone connecting Bletchley Park to Admiralty Intelligence Headquarters in London. The call lasted 4 minutes. When he hung up, he looked at Thornhill with an expression she'd never seen before, something between vindication and sorrow. "Do you know who Otto Schmitz is?" "Kriegsmarine flag officer. Strategic planning." "He's the reason we're losing the Atlantic," Deniston said quietly. "His Wolfpack coordination doctrine has sunk more tonnage in 3 months than Germany managed in the previous year. Admiralty estimates we're 8 weeks from catastrophic supply failure if his tactics continue unchecked." Thornhill understood immediately. This wasn't just intelligence, it was opportunity. "The Americans will want this," Deniston continued. "They have the range we lack. P-47 Thunderbolts operating from East Anglia could reach the intercept coordinates. And if we act on this, sir?" Deniston's pause carried the weight of impossible choices. Every ultra-based operation risked exposing the secret that Britain had broken Enigma. But some targets justified existential risk. If we act, hundreds of U-boat crewmen die when their command structure collapses. If we don't act, thousands of merchant sailors drown in the North Atlantic. He stood, gathering the translation documents. This message should not exist, but it does. And now we must decide what existence costs. Within 3 hours, the decoded intercept reached Air Vice Marshal Lee Mallory's desk. Within 6 hours, American fighter commanders at RAF Halesworth received mission authorization directly from 8th Air Force Headquarters. The mathematics of war had shifted. Intelligence had shaped the outcome before a single aircraft left the ground. Admiral Schmitz had 4 days to live. The tactical problem arrived at RAF Halesworth as a single-page intelligence brief with impossible requirements. Target: high-value German naval commander. Location: French coastal airspace, 287 miles from friendly air bases. Window of opportunity, 6 minutes. Fighter escort, 6 Bf-109Gs. Required capabilities: long-range penetration, high-altitude performance, overwhelming firepower. Colonel Hubert Zemacki, commanding officer of the 56th Fighter Group, spread navigation charts across the operations room table and began eliminating options with brutal efficiency. P-51 Mustangs? Suggested Major David Schilling. None available in theater with sufficient range tanks, Zemke replied. And the few B-model Mustangs we have can't match a 109 above 20,000 feet. Spitfires? 300-mile combat radius maximum, even with drop tanks. They'd flame out over the channel on the return leg. Lieutenant Colonel Caldwell studied the fuel consumption tables with the intensity of an accountant auditing a bankrupt company. Every aircraft type they possessed fell short: too slow, too short-ranged, too lightly armed, or unavailable in sufficient numbers. Except one. The P-47, Caldwell said quietly. With external tanks and cruise climb profile, we can reach the intercept zone. Zemke looked skeptical. The Thunderbolt's a 7-ton bathtub with wings. It's built for high-altitude bomber escort, not long-range penetration strikes. It's also the only aircraft we have that can carry enough fuel, fight at altitude, and bring pilots home alive. Caldwell pulled out performance data compiled by Republic Aviation engineers. With two 108-gallon ferry tanks, we get 521 gallons total capacity. Cruise at 170 indicated, lean mixture settings. We can cover 668 miles with reserve. Reserve measured in what? Minutes? 12 minutes, assuming perfect navigation and no combat at full throttle. The room fell silent. 12 minutes represented the difference between mission success and 14 pilots ditching in the channel with zero rescue probability. Schilling broke the silence. The P-47's never been flown that far operationally. Republic's test pilots pushed it to 400 miles in controlled conditions. We're talking about adding another 268 miles while maintaining combat readiness. Then we make it work, Caldwell said flatly. Captain Frank O'Connor, Chief Engineering Officer for the 56th Fighter Group, received orders that violated every operational manual Republic Aviation had published. Push the P-47C Thunderbolt beyond maximum recommended range. Modify fuel mixture settings. Eliminate all non-essential weight. Calculate cruise climb profiles that maximize fuel efficiency while maintaining combat speed. O'Connor assembled his technical team in the maintenance hangar, surrounded by disassembled Pratt & Whitney engines and fuel system diagrams. "Gentlemen, we're going to do something monumentally stupid," he announced. "We're going to turn a short-range interceptor into a long-range strike fighter using nothing but mathematics and prayer." The modifications began immediately. External fuel tanks pressure-tested beyond normal specifications. Fuel mixture controls adjusted to run leaner than Republic engineers recommended, risking engine damage but extending range. Ammunition loads reduced from 3,400 rounds to 2,000 rounds, saving 267 pounds. Armor glass panels behind pilot seats removed, saving another 47 pounds. O'Connor calculated fuel consumption rates at different altitudes, air speeds, and mixture settings. The optimal profile emerged: low-altitude penetration at 170 mph indicated airspeed, burning approximately 95 gallons per hour. Climb to intercept altitude only at the final approach, conserving fuel during the long overwater transit. "If they encounter headwinds," asked Technical Sergeant Ray Morrison. "They won't make it back," O'Connor replied simply. By March 16th, 14 P-47C Thunderbolts sat on the Halesworth flight line, each modified beyond factory specifications. each carrying fuel loads that pushed structural limits, each representing a calculated gamble that engineering could defeat geography. The weapon had been chosen. Now it needed pilots willing to fly it into mathematics that allowed no mistakes. The mission briefing scheduled for 1800 hours would determine who lived and who drowned in the English Channel. Lieutenant Colonel James Ironhand Caldwell stood at the front of the operations room waiting for the 14 selected pilots to settle into folding chairs. He'd chosen each man based on navigation skill, fuel discipline, and psychological stability under extended stress, not aerial victory counts or aggressive reputation. That selection criteria had created immediate tension. Captain William Harris sat in the front row, jaw tight, radiating barely controlled frustration. At 28 years old with 7 claimed kills, he'd expected to lead the fighter element. Instead, Caldwell had assigned him as wingman to First Lieutenant Jack Mercer, a man with fewer victories, less flight time, and none of Harris's natural charisma. Mercer sat 3 rows back, reviewing fuel consumption tables with mechanical pencil annotations in the margins. He'd already calculated 17 different emergency diversion scenarios based on varying headwind conditions. Caldwell began without preamble. "Gentlemen, you've been selected for a maximum range interception mission that exceeds every operational parameter the P-47 was designed for. Your target is a high-value German naval commander whose continued existence is costing Allied sailors their lives. The intercept coordinates are 287 miles from this airfield. You will have approximately 12 minutes of fuel reserve after reaching the target area." Harris raised his hand immediately. "Sir, who leads the attack element?" "Lieutenant Mercer will lead the primary attack. You'll fly his wing." Harris's expression darkened. "With respect, sir, I have more combat experience and more confirmed kills. This mission requires precision," Caldwell interrupted, his voice carrying the flat authority that had earned him the nickname Iron Hand. "Mercer has the best navigation record in the squadron and the discipline to follow fuel management protocols exactly. You have a tendency to push throttles forward when adrenaline hits. On this mission, that tendency kills everyone." The room absorbed the rebuke in uncomfortable silence. Mercer didn't look up from his calculations. He'd learned years ago that competence earned respect slower than charisma, but lasted longer. Harris wanted glory. Mercer wanted to return alive with mission accomplished, in that order. "Captain Harris," Caldwell continued, "your job is to protect Mercer during his attack run and engage any escorts that threaten him. You will not, under any circumstances, pursue individual victories at the expense of fuel reserves. Clear?" "Clear, sir." Harris's tone carried an edge that suggested the conversation would continue later. After the briefing, Harris cornered Mercer outside the operations building. "You know why he picked you, right?" Harris said. "You're predictable. You'll follow orders like a machine. But when we're over France with 109s on our tail, you're going to hesitate. You're going to calculate angles while I'm already firing." Mercer met his eyes calmly. "I've shot down 5 German aircraft by calculating angles while they were reacting on instinct. My method keeps me alive. Yours might too, until the day it doesn't." "This mission isn't about survival," Harris shot back. "It's about killing the most important German admiral in the Atlantic theater. That requires aggression, not arithmetic." "It requires both," Mercer replied. "And if you burn fuel showing off, neither of us comes home." Harris stepped closer. "When we get to that condor, don't get in my way." Mercer didn't flinch. "When we get to that condor, follow my lead. Or explain to Caldwell why you're swimming in the channel." Caldwell watched the exchange from the operations room window. The tension between Harris's aggression and Mercer's discipline mirrored every leadership challenge he'd faced. managing talented pilots whose egos threatened mission success. But he'd chosen correctly. Mercer would get them to the target. Harris would ensure they hit hard enough to matter. Whether they could work together long enough to survive remained the only variable Caldwell couldn't calculate. March 17, 1943. 09:17 hours. Berlin Tempelhof Airfield. Admiral Otto Schmitz climbed the boarding ladder of Focke-Wulf Condor DAG, wearing his full Kriegsmarine dress uniform. Navy blue wool tunic with gold buttons, white shirt, black tie, and peaked cap bearing the eagle and swastika insignia. The formality wasn't vanity. U-boat crews at Lorient expected their commanders to arrive as symbols of naval authority, not as casual travelers. His leather attaché case contained documents that would justify sinking the Condor if British intelligence knew their contents. Updated Wolfpack coordination protocols, revised Atlantic convoy route predictions based on February intercept data, and deployment schedules for 18 U-boats departing Lorient between March 20th and April 3rd. Kapitän Leutnant Franz Weber, Schmitz's aide, followed with 2 additional document cases. Sir, meteorological reports indicate clear skies over northern France. Estimated flight time to Lorient, 2 hours, 40 minutes. Schmitz nodded, settling into the forward cabin's leather seat. The Condor's civilian airliner origins remained evident. Carpeted floor, curtained windows, comfortable seating designed for Lufthansa passengers who once flew this route to Lisbon and South America. Now it carried the architect of Germany's Atlantic strategy to inspect the concrete U-boat pens that Britain couldn't destroy. The 4 BMW 323 radial engines coughed to life sequentially. Their combined 4,800 horsepower pulling the aircraft down Tempelhof's main runway at 09:28 hours, 2 minutes ahead of schedule. 6,000 feet above the departure corridor, Oberleutnant Karl Richter led the Bf-109G escort formation in a wide protective circle. Richter commanded the 6th fighter element from Jagdgeschwader 2, each aircraft armed with one 20mm MG-151 cannon and 2 13mm MG-131 machine guns. His pilots were experienced. Average flight time, 847 hours, combined aerial victories, 32. But more importantly, they were complacent. Condor is airborne, Richter radioed. Form escort pattern. Maintain 3,000-meter separation. The mission briefing had emphasized routine transport security. Allied fighters hadn't penetrated this far into Luftwaffe-controlled airspace since 1940. RAF Spitfires lacked the range. American P-47s rarely ventured beyond bomber escort duties. The coastal radar network provided continuous coverage from Holland to Brittany. Every factor suggested this would be another uneventful protection flight. Boring patrol work while a high-ranking officer reviewed submarine operations. Richter checked his fuel gauge. 400 liters. More than sufficient for the 2-hour escort duty. He settled into formation, scanning empty sky more from habit than genuine threat assessment. Below, the Condor climbed through scattered clouds at 178 knots indicated airspeed, heading southwest toward the French coast. Inside the Condor's cabin, Schmitz reviewed U-boat deployment schedules with methodical precision. Each boat represented mathematical variables in his strategic calculations: fuel capacity, torpedo loads, patrol duration, assigned hunting zones. He'd positioned them along convoy routes using weather predictions and historical shipping data, forcing Allied escorts to spread resources across multiple threat sectors. The results spoke clearly. In February alone, 43 merchant ships sunk, 279,000 tons of shipping destroyed, 1,847 Allied sailors killed or missing. Weber interrupted his calculations. "Sir, we're approaching the French coast. Estimated arrival at Lorient? 12:10 hours." Schmitz glanced out the window at the patchwork farmland below. Somewhere down there, Allied agents undoubtedly monitored German movements, resistance networks, coast watchers, intelligence operatives. But monitoring meant nothing without capability to act. The Allies couldn't reach him here. Every intelligence assessment confirmed it. British fighters couldn't fly this far. American fighters wouldn't risk penetration this deep without bomber escort. The mathematics of range and fuel consumption created an invisible shield more reliable than armor plate. Schmitz returned to his documents, confident in the calculations that protected him. He had 53 minutes to live. 947 hours. 14 Republic P-47C. Thunderbolts departed RAF Halesworth in two-ship elements, spacing themselves at 30-second intervals to avoid concentrated radar signatures. Lieutenant Jack Mercer led the formation at 500 feet above the gray North Sea, low enough that wave tops occasionally disappeared beneath his wings. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine rumbled with the restrained power of 2,000 horses held at cruise settings. 170 miles per hour indicated. Mixture leaned to the edge of roughness. Propeller pitch optimized for maximum range. His eyes moved in practiced sequence. Fuel gauge, compass heading, stopwatch, horizon, fuel gauge again. External tanks showed 203 gallons remaining. Internal tanks, 287 gallons. Total, 490 gallons after 23 minutes of flight. The mathematics were holding, barely. Behind him, Captain Will Harris flew wing position with aggressive precision. Tight formation, constant small corrections, burning fuel through the unnecessary throttle movements. Mercer keyed his radio briefly. Ease off to save it for the fight. Harris's response crackled back. I'm fine, lead. But Mercer saw Harris's aircraft bobbing slightly in his peripheral vision. Micro-adjustments that burned fractions of gallons that would matter in 90 minutes. The channel crossing felt endless. No landmarks. No navigation references except compass heading and elapsed time. Just gray water stretching to the horizon in every direction, and the constant mental calculation. Fuel burned versus distance covered versus fuel required for return. First Lieutenant Paul Cochran, flying Element 3, checked his fuel every 45 seconds. The obsessive monitoring didn't change the numbers, but the ritual provided psychological comfort against the fear that gnawed at every pilot's discipline. What if the winds aloft were stronger than forecast? What if the intercept coordinates were wrong? What if they reached the target area and found empty sky, having burned fuel for nothing, with insufficient reserves to reach England? Cochran's hand trembled slightly on the throttle. He forced it steady. Colonel Caldwell flew the trailing element, monitoring the formation with tactical detachment. His fuel consumption matched predictions exactly. 97 gallons burned after 31 minutes. If every pilot maintained perfect discipline, 12 would return. Maybe 13. He didn't allow himself to calculate which two wouldn't make it. The radio remained silent, except for essential navigation updates. Each transmission conserved battery power and reduced the chance of Luftwaffe radio direction finding equipment, detecting their approach. At 10:19 hours, the French coastline appeared as a dark smudge against the lighter gray horizon. Caldwell keyed his radio once. Titan formation. Prepare for climb on my mark. The 14 Thunderbolts contracted into a tighter tactical formation. External tanks nearly empty. Internal fuel dropping toward the point of no return. Mercer recalculated one final time. 287 miles behind them. 381 miles total mission distance. Current fuel state, 441 gallons remaining. The numbers worked, if nothing went wrong. At 10 to 27 hours, Caldwell's voice cut through the radio silence. All aircraft, drop external tanks. Execute climb to 20,000 feet. Attack heading 045. 14 drop tanks tumbled away, glinting briefly before splashing into the channel. 14 throttles advanced to climb power. 14 pilots felt their fuel gauges drop faster as engines consumed gas at increased rates. Mercer's altimeter unwound upward, 5,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 15,000 feet. His fuel gauge read 398 gallons. The return flight required 310 gallons minimum. That left 88 gallons for combat, approximately 11 minutes at war emergency power. Mercer scanned the sky ahead, searching for the silhouettes that intelligence had promised would be there. For 10 seconds, he saw nothing. Then, emerging from haze at their 12 o'clock position, exactly where mathematics predicted, 1 4-engine Condor and 6 single-engine fighters. Harris's voice came over the radio, tight with anticipation. "Contact! Bandits! 12 o'clock level!" Mercer's response was calm, measured, surgical. "I see them. All aircraft, attack speed. Engage on my command." The fuel calculations no longer mattered. They'd reached the moment where arithmetic surrendered to violence. 10:34 hours, 19,000 feet over the French coast. The Focke-Wulf Condor appeared first, a 4-engine crucifix silhouetted against cumulus clouds, exactly where Captain O'Connor's fuel calculations had predicted it would be. Lieutenant Jack Mercer's heart rate didn't change. His breathing remained steady, but his mind shifted into the geometric visualization that had kept him alive through 5 previous engagements: relative speeds, closure rates, deflection angles, energy states. The Condor cruised at approximately 200 miles per hour. The 6 Bf-109 escorts flew a loose defensive pattern: too high, too level, too low. Professional formation discipline, but oriented toward threats from behind and below, not from Allied airspace they believed unreachable. Mercer keyed his radio. "Lead has visual. 1 Condor, 6 109 escorts. Target bearing 043, range 4 miles, angels 19. Colonel Caldwell's voice came back immediately, calm as a weather report. "All aircraft, confirm target acquisition." 13 acknowledgments crackled through Mercer's headset in rapid sequence. "Drop external tanks," Caldwell ordered. "Combat speed. Attack in elements. Primary objective is the Condor. Repeat. Primary objective is the Condor. Escorts are secondary. Execute." The external tanks fell away like shed skin. 14 P-47 Thunderbolts accelerated from 240 miles per hour to 380 miles per hour in 40 seconds, their massive radial engines screaming at war emergency power. 7 tons of aircraft and ammunition transformed into kinetic energy vectors, converging on a single point in space. Captain Will Harris shoved his throttle to the firewall, feeling the Thunderbolt surge forward. This was what he'd trained for, the moment aggression became virtue, when hesitation meant death and violence meant survival. "Stay on my wing," Mercer transmitted, his voice still maddeningly calm. Harris ignored him, pushing ahead by 50 feet. Leadership went to the bold, not the cautious. Oberleutnant Karl Richter saw them 3 seconds too late. His peripheral vision caught movement at 2 o'clock high, multiple contacts diving from altitude with overtake speed that seemed impossible. American fighters shouldn't be here, couldn't be here. "Achtung! Feindliche Jäger! 3 o'clock high!" Richter yanked his control stick hard left, braking toward the threat. But the Americans had altitude, speed, and surprise, the trinity of aerial combat advantage. Richter's warning came as Mercer's gun sight settled on the Condor's left wing route. Mercer's thumb hovered over the trigger. Range, 800 yards and closing. Deflection angle, 12 degrees. Closure speed, 180 miles per hour relative. Weight, 700 yards. Weight, 600 yards. The Condor filled his windscreen. 4 engines, cruciform tail, defenseless fuselage. Mercer pressed the trigger. 8 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns erupted simultaneously. 50 rounds per second per gun. 400 rounds per second total, each bullet weighing 1.7 ounces, traveling at 2,800 feet per second. The left wing of the Condor disintegrated. Fuel lines ruptured. Hydraulic fluid vaporized. Aluminum structure crumpled under the kinetic hammer of armor-piercing incendiary rounds, walking from wing root to outboard engine. Mercer held the trigger for 3 seconds. 1,200 rounds expended. Then he released, pulling hard right to avoid the debris field. Harris came in from the opposite angle, guns blazing, targeting the cockpit. His rounds walked through the Condor's nose section, through windscreen, through instrument panel, through human bodies. Admiral Otto Schmitz died instantly, his strategic mind erased by a .50 caliber round that entered through his left eye and exited through the back of his skull. The Condor nosed over, left wing trailing flame, beginning the long spiral toward the French countryside below. "Primary is hit!" Harris shouted. "Primary is going down!" But the Bf-109s were already turning inward, and the fuel gauges showed 351 gallons remaining. The killing had taken 40 seconds. The survival would take much longer. The Condor's left wing separated at 18,400 feet. Admiral Schmitz's body, still strapped into the forward cabin seat, tumbled through disintegrating fuselage structure as 400 gallons of aviation fuel ignited in a fireball visible for 12 miles. Classified documents, Wolfpack protocols, convoy predictions, U-boat deployment schedules scattered into French airspace as burning confetti. Lieutenant Jack Mercer had already pulled into a climbing right turn, gaining altitude for energy advantage. His fuel gauge read 347 gallons. His ammunition counter, 1,623 rounds remaining. The mathematics of survival had begun. Oberleutnant Karl Richter dove his Bf-109G toward the American formation with the rage of professional humiliation. They'd appeared from nowhere. Penetrated airspace Germany controlled absolutely. Killed an admiral under his protection. The impossible had occurred, which meant his career, and possibly his life, was forfeit unless he delivered retribution. "Alle Jäger angreifen!" Richter screamed into his radio. "All fighters, attack!" 6 Bf-109s converged on 14 P-47s, like wolves circling bison. Faster, more agile, murderous. Captain Will Harris saw the lead 109 diving toward Mercer's 6 o'clock. For once, aggression and duty aligned perfectly. Harris snap-rolled inverted, pulled through into a split S, and came out 400 yards behind Richter's aircraft. The German pilot never saw him. Harris's first burst caught the 109's tail section, shredding rudder and elevator. Richter's aircraft pitched violently nose down, spinning toward the ground, trailing smoke. "Splash one!" Harris shouted, adrenaline overriding radio discipline. But 2 more 109s were already on him. The dogfight dissolved into chaos. A 3-dimensional knife fight at 300 miles per hour where geometry and violence intersected. First Lieutenant Paul Cochran felt cannon shells punch through his right wing. The P-47 shuddered but held together. Republic's rugged construction absorbing damage that would have disintegrated lighter fighters. He reversed hard, trading altitude for speed, forcing his attacker into an overshoot. Second Lieutenant Robert Hayes wasn't as fortunate. A 20mm cannon round from Unteroffizier Werner Klein's Bf-109 detonated against Hayes's engine cowling. The Pratt & Whitney R-2800 disintegrated in a spray of shrapnel and fire. Hayes had 3 seconds to recognize he was dead before the fuel tank behind the cockpit exploded. The P-47 became a falling torch. "2 is hit!" someone screamed over the radio. "2 is going down!" Colonel Caldwell's voice cut through the panic. "Break contact! All aircraft! Execute southwest dive! Get below their turning radius and run for the deck!" The discipline of training overrode the chaos of combat. 13 remaining Thunderbolts dove simultaneously, using their weight and dive speed to disengage from the more maneuverable 109s. The German fighters followed initially, but broke off as the Americans descended through 8,000 feet. Recognizing pursuit would carry them too far from their own bases. Mercer leveled at 500 feet, his airspeed indicator showing 420 miles per hour in the dive. Behind him, Harris's P-47 trailed smoke from its left wing. Battle damage, but still flying. "All aircraft, fuel check," Caldwell ordered. The responses came back in grim sequence. Most showed between 290 and 310 gallons, sufficient for return if nothing else went wrong. Cochrane's response was different. "Lead. 3 has 265 gallons and losing fuel pressure. I've got maybe 40 minutes. The mathematics were unforgiving. 40 minutes at current consumption meant Cochrane would flame out 30 miles short of England. Caldwell didn't hesitate. 3. Maintain formation. We'll nurse you home. The formation turned southwest toward the channel, leaving behind a burning Condor, a dead admiral, scattered documents, and one American pilot whose parachute hadn't opened. The entire engagement had lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Mercer checked his fuel, 294 gallons remaining. Just enough. If the winds cooperated, if his engine held, if mathematics prevailed over entropy one final time. Although 7 hours. The English Channel stretched ahead like a gray execution ground. 13 P-47 Thunderbolts flew at 500 feet. Engines throttled back to minimum sustainable cruise power, pilots nursing fuel gauges that dropped with metronomic cruelty. Lieutenant Jack Mercer's gauge read 287 gallons. His mental arithmetic ran continuously, distance remaining 264 miles, consumption rate 92 gallons per hour at current settings, fuel required 246 gallons minimum, margin 41 gallons, approximately 27 minutes of reserve. The mathematics worked, barely, if nothing else went wrong. First Lieutenant Paul Cochrane's engine was dying. The 20mm cannon damage had punctured a fuel line somewhere deep in the cowling. Fuel pressure fluctuated between 38 and 42 pounds per square inch, when it should have held steady at 50. His gauge showed 241 gallons, but the leak meant effective capacity was unknowable. "Lead?" 3, Cochrane transmitted, keeping his voice steady. "Fuel pressure dropping. I'm showing 241 remaining, but actual consumption looks higher." Colonel Caldwell's response was immediate. 3. Reduce throttle another 100 RPM. We'll match your speed. The formation slowed from 180 miles per hour to 165, purchasing fuel economy at the cost of time. Every minute at reduced speed meant 1 more minute exposed to potential Luftwaffe pursuit. 1 more minute of psychological torture as fuel gauges declined toward zero. Cochrane watched his gauge. 238 gallons. 235 gallons. 210 gallons. The leak was worsening. Captain Will Harris's P-47 trailed thin white smoke from battle-damaged wing fuel cells. His gauge showed 268 gallons, but the smoke suggested fuel was vaporizing somewhere in the wing structure, burning off into the slipstream rather than feeding his engine. He'd already switched to reserve tank to preserve main tank fuel, gambling that the leak originated in the external cell and hadn't compromised internal capacity. Harris glanced at Mercer, flying steady formation ahead. Maddeningly calm, methodical, checking instruments with mechanical precision even as they all raced entropy toward England. For the first time since the mission briefed, Harris understood why Caldwell had chosen Mercer to lead. Aggression won dogfights. Discipline won survival. 1129 hours. The English coastline appeared as a dark line against lighter gray, salvation measured in statute miles that felt infinite. Mercer's fuel gauge, 203 gallons. Cochrane's fuel gauge, 187 gallons with falling pressure. Harris's fuel gauge, 196 gallons with visible smoke trail. All aircraft, Halesworth Tower is cleared for emergency straight-in approach, Caldwell transmitted. No pattern work, no go-arounds. You get one chance. 1147 hours. RAF Halesworth came into view. 12 P-47s approached in ragged formation, one missing entirely, several trailing smoke, all riding the edge of fuel exhaustion. Mercer entered the pattern first, gear down, flaps deployed, engine RPM dropping as he chopped throttle. The Thunderbolt settled onto the runway with mechanical precision. He taxied clear immediately, making room for the aircraft behind him. Harris landed second, his smoking wing leaving a haze trail across the approach path. 3rd through 11th landed in quick succession. Some smooth, some bouncing hard on damaged gear, all safely down. Cochrane approached 12th with his fuel pressure warning light illuminated steady red. He crossed the threshold at 95 miles per hour, too fast but unable to reduce power without flaming out. The P-47 hit hard, bounced once, settled, and rolled to the end of the runway before the engine coughed, sputtered, and died. Ground crew found 4 gallons remaining in Cochrane's tanks. Harris's aircraft held 7 gallons. Mercer's showed 23 gallons still flying on his characteristic margin of calculated excess. 13 pilots climbed out of their aircraft and walked on legs that trembled from adrenaline depletion and relief. One pilot, Second Lieutenant Robert Hayes, would never walk again. The mission had succeeded. Admiral Otto Schmitz was dead. The cost, 1 American life and 13 aircraft, pushed beyond every engineering limit Republic Aviation had ever calculated. Colonel Caldwell stood on the tarmac, watching his pilots, knowing the real consequences wouldn't emerge for weeks. When German U-boat coordination collapsed, when Kriegsmarine morale fractured, when the Battle of the Atlantic tilted irreversibly toward Allied victory. For now, there was only exhaustion, relief, and the quiet knowledge that mathematics and nerve had defeated geography. March 17, 1943, 1423 hours. Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, Berlin. The teletype message from Luftwaffe Command France arrived with priority, immediate classification. FW-200 Condor d'Agay, lost to enemy fighter action. All crew presumed killed. Admiral Schmitz confirmed dead. American P-47 fighters intercepted at exact coordinates and time of scheduled flight. Investigation underway. Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz, Commander-in-Chief of the Kriegsmarine, read the message 3 times before its implications fully registered. American fighters had appeared at the exact coordinates, at the exact time, targeting the exact aircraft, carrying Germany's most valuable naval strategist. The precision wasn't coincidence. It wasn't luck. It was intelligence. Detailed, specific, actionable intelligence that should not have existed. Dönitz reached for the secure telephone connecting him to the cipher office. "Enigma has been compromised," he said without preamble. "Change all naval codes immediately. Assume the Allies have been reading our traffic for months." The response came hesitantly. "Herr Gross Admiral, our cryptographic analysis indicates Enigma remains mathematically unbreakable. Perhaps the flight schedule was obtained through agents, or they knew the exact minute," Dönitz interrupted, his voice cold. "No agent network provides that precision. Change the codes. Now." The impact rippled through the U-boat fleet like shockwaves through water. Kapitän-Leutnant Heinrich Müller, commander of U-427 on patrol in the North Atlantic, received the coded message announcing Schmitz's death while submerged at periscope depth. He read it to his crew in the cramped forward torpedo room. Silence followed, not the operational silence of submarine discipline, but the stunned silence of men realizing their invisible shield had shattered. If the Allies could find and kill Admiral Schmitz using precise intelligence, What else did they know? Every patrol route, every rendezvous coordinate, every wolf pack assembly point, all transmitted via Enigma, all potentially compromised. Muller saw the fear in his crew's eyes. Submariners survived through invisibility. The ocean's vastness was their protection. But if Allied cryptographers could read German naval communications, the Atlantic had become transparent. The psychological advantage Germany had maintained since 1940, the certainty that Enigma made them invisible, died with Admiral Schmitz over the French coast. March 18, 1943, Admiralty House, London. The ultra-intelligence summary crossed Winston Churchill's desk with the classification Most Secret, higher than Top Secret, reserved exclusively for Enigma-derived intelligence. Operation Vengeance Atlantic, successful. Admiral Otto Schmitz, killed in fighter interception. German Naval Command, demonstrating awareness of communications compromise. Enigma code changes anticipated. Churchill read the report with grim satisfaction. Schmitz's death would save hundreds of merchant ships, but only if Germany never confirmed how the ambush occurred. He drafted the directive personally. All personnel involved in Operation Vengeance Atlantic are forbidden from discussing mission details under Official Secrets Act. Cover story: routine fighter patrol encountered German transport aircraft by chance. No mention of intelligence sources. Violation punishable by court-martial and imprisonment. The Americans would receive similar orders. The mission had succeeded tactically, but its strategic value depended on maintaining the fiction that Enigma remained secure. March 22, 1943. U-Boat Command, Berlin. Dönitz reviewed the revised casualty projections with his staff. Without Schmitz's coordinated wolfpack tactics, U-boat effectiveness had declined measurably within 5 days. Submarines operating on individual initiative, rather than orchestrated group attacks, achieved significantly lower success rates. February 1943, 63 Allied ships sunk, 359,000 tons. March 1943 projected 41 Allied ships sunk, 237,000 tons. The numbers represented more than tonnage. They represented the collapse of Germany's only viable strategy for defeating Britain through starvation. Can his tactics be replicated? Dönitz asked. Korvettenkapitän Adalbert Schnee shook his head. Schmitz's tactical mind was irreplaceable. His deputy understands the theory, but lacks the intuitive grasp of probabilistic convoy prediction. Dönitz stared at the Atlantic theater map, seeing convoy routes marked in blue and U-boat patrol zones marked in red. The red zones no longer intersected blue routes with Schmitz's mathematical precision. One decoded message, one fighter interception, one dead admiral. The Battle of the Atlantic had shifted irrevocably, and Germany would never fully understand why.